School governors face a wide range of challenges whilst attempting to manage their schools successfully. This programme focuses on a team of governors tackling some of the legal responsibilities that they may have to face. Our panel has been placed in the role of new governors at a hypothetical school. They'll be shown a sequence of 3 reconstructed events, each developing a dilemma facing the governing body. Their challenge after each stage will be to use their experience to discuss their duties and how best they could handle the situation. Meet the panel. Tanis Jackson, an LEA governor and former additional governor with 12 years' experience, including 5 as chair. Peter Crawshaw, a community governor with 8 years' experience. And Kath Carline, a parent governor beginning her 2nd year in the role. Keeping a close eye on the proceedings and assessing the governor's performance is Paul McGann, an education officer with 15 years of experience supporting and training governors and troubleshooting problems in schools. How will the team handle the challenge? The panel start by watching the first reconstruction of events. At an inner-city secondary school with behavioural problems, the head's been worried about a new teacher's performance for a number of months. One evening, a group of pupils spot the new teacher leaving a gay club in another town. And within days, the whole school knows. A number of children begin to verbally abuse the teacher, and he begins to lose control of several of his classes. The head receives a letter of complaint from a parent claiming that their child's education is suffering as a result. The head decides to begin monitoring the teacher. The parents feel that this is not a satisfactory solution due to the length of time it'll take, and they write to one of the governors stating their concerns. Our panel begin by trying to put the events into perspective.
There are 2 issues here, really, aren't there? There's the issue of equal opportunities, which, of course, is any manager needs to sort out as to how this gay teacher can be protected from being treated differently from his colleagues. And there's also the wider personnel issues about how do you deal with incapability.
At the end of the day, I think we've got to think about what the governor's position is on this.
And also defending the member of staff as well, because if he's being discriminated, or if there's any kind of discrimination going on, or they feel that he's being persecuted by the head because he's gay rather than because he's underachieving or underperforming, the head's also got to be very, very clear on why he's monitoring him.
It's difficult to see what action the head could have taken in the first instance, apart from deciding to begin monitoring the teacher, because the main thing that's happening here is that the class is falling apart. This is a fundamental issue to do with the teacher's performance, and so of course the head's got to assess the scale of the problem in order to decide what to do before one deals with the issue about his sexual orientation.
It's very important that governors act to make sure that the issue of sexual orientation and performance are dealt with completely separately, even though they may be confused in the minds of others. In fact, if there's any complication, it may make it more difficult to deal with issues of underperformance if the teacher is able to say that issues of sexual orientation are impeding his ability to teach pupils. Governors have also correctly identified they have a duty of care to protect this teacher from discrimination, whether that's from parents or children or indeed from other staff.
The panel moves on to discuss how to handle the letter of complaint.
I wonder whether the head has reported to governors that he's received this letter, because if that's the case, the governors will have some notification that there's an issue going on. And I mean, if it comes to competency procedures and an appeal, then the governing body needs to be untainted by prior knowledge and information of this issue. So, you know, there are issues about he's written to one governor that immediately precludes that governor from being on the panel.
But you clearly need a process which is going to govern the whole way in which this sort of complaint ought to be dealt with in the first place. And it seems to me that the starting point is bound to be that the head and the chair both receive the original letter before it's brought to the governing body as such.
I would still disagree with the idea that you automatically share it with the chair.
Yes.
I think you'd need to check your committee structures and see who was on the discipline committee and who was on the appeals committee. And if you needed to discuss it with someone other than those people.
It's very important that governors have a protocol for how to deal with letters of complaint, particularly letters of complaint about members of staff. It is correct that governors should not get involved in any discussion of the issue because they may have to act as a disciplinary body or an appeals body later on in the process. However, just receiving a letter does not debar governors from any such discussion. Any complaint against a member of staff should be referred to the chair of governors and the head teacher, and an appropriate policy identified for dealing with the complaint and resolving the issue to the satisfaction of the complainant.
Shall we watch the next clip and find out what goes on?
2 weeks later, the new teacher claims he's suffering from stress and takes several days off. The head is unsympathetic and feels the teacher is using recent events as an excuse for his poor work. The head decides to begin capability procedures. The teacher starts to complain to colleagues that he's not getting the support he needs. By now, several parent and teacher governors are aware of the situation, and some attempt to bring it up at a meeting.
I think there are a lot of issues about staff absence due to stress. I think teaching has become a very, very stressful profession.
I definitely think that that's where discipline is the absolute linchpin, because if you've got good discipline and teachers are not stressed out.
And presumably also feeling part of a well-supported team. I would think that the more difficult the school, the more important good teamwork is.
Yes, I think governors are responsible for the well-being, not just of all the pupils in the school, but of the staff, that the staff are happy and supported.
In respect of the stress of staff, governors do have an important role to play. One is to ensure that there are policies and procedures within the school to ensure that where teachers are describing stress as one of the reasons for making them absent from work, that these matters are followed up within the school and potentially then further afield. Local authorities have occupational welfare advisors who can give advice and support both to individual teachers and to schools in ways of reducing stress.
Our panel begins to question the best way for the governors to respond to events.
Maybe the head, and the governors for that matter, should call in personnel.
Yes.
From the authority and because they'll have dealt with issues like this before.
Well, the personnel would certainly be warning the head to be jolly careful about someone who calls in sick, to not
acknowledge that they are sick.
To acknowledge that they are sick,
yes.
like any good employer.
But maybe someone from personnel could come to talk to governors about their role in this and where they need to be. I mean, I know about the competency, but I'm not sure about some of the other stuff, so I would seek further advice.
At the meeting, I don't think the head should allow a general discussion about this member of staff. In fact, I'm sure he shouldn't allow that to happen, because it could prejudice the member of staff. And as you said before, Tanis, we've got some of those members of staff could be part of the appeal panel for the chap concerned, so they have to be impartial.
It seems to me also the role of the clerk to step in when these governors try to bring it up at a meeting, to say this is something that we can't just deal with on the hoof. It's strictly confidential, and it raises a whole set of wider issues as to how governors' meetings are dealt with, and this isn't the way.
It's actually the chair who has that responsibility.
The chair has the responsibility
to say, no, we cannot discuss this for these reasons, you know, and we must keep it all under wraps so that nobody is tainted by prior knowledge.
Our panel are absolutely correct that all issues pertaining to this individual teacher must be kept out of the governing body and remain confidential. There's a role to play here by both the Chair of Governors and the Chair of the Personnel Committee or Staffing Committee, which is to liaise with the LEA support to ensure that the head teacher is following all of their guidance and advice, and to make sure that the appropriate procedures are being followed. This will mean that the rest of the governing body can remain untainted by the evidence.
So, shall we see what the head does next then?
Yep.
Yes.
Eventually, the head decides that the new teacher is not capable of working effectively at the school and tells the governing body that he wishes to dismiss him. The teacher, meanwhile, takes his case to his union, who write to the governing body accusing the head of failing to do his job by providing a safe working environment for his staff. They argue this is a case of sexual harassment against the teacher by the pupils, and that he has not had the necessary support from the school. Several colleagues sympathise with the teacher as they feel the head is discriminating against him. The head claims his actions are based only on the teacher's performance in the classroom. The teacher will appeal if the dismissal takes place. The reconstruction prompts a discussion about whose side the governors should be on.
Regardless of the sexual harassment claim, if the head can satisfy the governors that indeed the teacher is incompetent, then I would have thought that you would have to support the head. I mean, he knows he's supposed to, he knows his job, and if he satisfies the governors and said, look, this teacher isn't competent, the education of these children is suffering, and we need to get a new member of staff in, then surely you would support that.
But it's not just down to the head's decision, is it? There are procedures which have to be gone through.
If we feel satisfied that all the correct procedures have been gone through, and I mean, we feel satisfied he's correct.
He's saying that he hasn't had the support that he needs. Well, part of the competency procedure is to build in support for the teacher. I think there are very clear guidelines about how competency has to be conducted. Yes. And if that's been done properly by the head, he will have the evidence.
The main thing that we've got to be sure about is that the dismissal isn't on this quite unlawful basis of this man's sexual orientation.
You know, the governor's job is to be a supporter and friend and all that business of the head. But the heads aren't always right. And far be it from me to say that a head isn't right. But, you know, in this instance, I think there's a big question mark about the way he's handled this whole thing from the beginning. And I think what I would want to see as a governor, faced with this, I would want to see the evidence that the competency procedure had been carried out to the letter.
At the disciplinary hearing, if the teacher is to be dismissed on grounds of incompetence, then the governing body panel will want to hear evidence, firstly that the appropriate monitoring has been put in place and that there's evidence arising out of that monitoring. Secondly, that appropriate support has been given to the teacher in order to give him an opportunity to improve. And thirdly, that any other issues the teacher has raised that might have been affecting his performance have been addressed through the process. Then the governing body will have sufficient evidence to enable them to decide how to proceed.
What can we do to make sure that the staff themselves feel happier at the school, want to go to work, and
maybe influence the culture a little bit?
Yes.
Try to influence the culture.
Yes, because there's nothing at the moment so that this couldn't happen again. We've got to make sure that we don't go through, go through this again, because that's right. Yes, it is very damaging for morale, isn't it?
Usually in the sex education policy, there's a lot about gender orientation today, and I would have thought that if that was investigated as to how the children have been taught about gender orientation, and look at some of the schemes of work and some of the planning that's gone into that, and if it's clear in the sex education policy that the children are taught about gender orientation and respect and choices and all that sort of thing, then the policy is obviously broken down.
This is an issue of sexual orientation which has been brought to the attention of the governing body. There may be other gay teachers within the school that are not known to the wider community or to the governors or to other members of staff. It's important that governors address the culture of the school to make sure that whatever the gender, ethnicity or sexual orientation of teachers, this is a supportive environment in which they can work.
And finally, Paul McGann sums up the key issues.
Disciplinary cases involving the potential dismissal of a member of staff are rare in schools, and many governors will go through their entire period of governorship without ever encountering one. However, when they do arise, it is important that all of those who are going to be involved in the process understand the procedures right at the start and that appropriate personnel and legal advice is taken. However, finding appropriate legal and personnel advice is comparatively easy, and it doesn't take away from the governors the responsibility for making the decision and determining the outcome based on the facts. And it's important to remember that the way in which the governors pursue disciplinary cases will have an important impact upon the morale and ethos of the school, and they need to be seen to be acting fairly and objectively and based on the evidence of the case.